Chapter 3 Under Ember. That morning, Dune had arrived at the pipeworks full of anticipation. This was the world of serious work at last, where he would get a chance to do something useful. What he had learned in school, and from his father, and from his own investigations, he could put it all to good purpose now. He pushed open the heavy pipeworks door and stepped inside. The air smelled strongly of dampness and moldy rubber. He strode up a hallway where yellow stickers hung from pegs on the walls. At the end of the hallway was a room full of people, some of them sitting on benches and pulling on knee-high rubber boots, some struggling into their slickers, some buckling on tool belts. A raucous clamor filled the room. Dune watched from the doorway, eager to join in but not sure what to do. After a moment, a man emerged from the throng. He thrust out a hand. "Lister Monk, Pipeworks Director," he said. "You're the new boy, right? What size feet do you have? Large, medium, or small?" "Medium," said Dune, and Lister found him a slicker and a pair of boots. The boots were so ancient that their green rubber was cracked all over, as if covered with spider webs. He gave Dune a tool belt, too, in which were wrenches and hammers, spools of wire and tape, and tubes of some sort of black goop. "You'll be in Tunnel 97 today," Lister said. "Arlen Frawl will go down with you and show you what to do." He pointed to a short, delicate-looking girl with a white blonde braid down her back. "She may not look like an expert, but she is." Dune buckled his tool belt around his waist and put on his slicker, which, for some reason, smelled like sweaty feet. "This way," said Arlen. "This way," said Arlen, without saying hello or smiling. She wove through the crowd of workers to a door-marked stairway and opened it. Stone steps led so far down that Dune couldn't see the end of them. On either side was a sheer wall of dark reddish stone, glistening with dampness. There was no railing. Along the ceiling ran a single wire from which a light bulb hung every few yards. Water stood in shallow pools on each stair, and the hollow worn into the stones by years of footsteps. They started down. Dune concentrated on his feet. The clumsy boots made it hard not to stumble. As they went deeper, he began to hear a low roar, so low he seemed to hear it more with his stomach more than his ears. It grew louder and louder. Was it a machine of some kind? Maybe the generator? The stairway came to an end at a door marked Main Tunnel. Arlen opened it, and as they stepped through, Dune realized that the sound he had been hearing wasn't a machine. It was the river. He stood still, staring. Like most people, he had never been really sure what a river was. Just that it was water that somehow flowed on its own. He'd imagined it would be like the clear, narrow stream that came out of the kitchen faucet, only bigger and horizontal instead of vertical. But this was something entirely different. Not a stream of water, but endless tons of it pouring by. Wide as the widest street in Ember, churning and dipping and swirling. The river roared past, its turbulent surface like black, liquid glass scattered with flecks of light. Dune had never seen anything that moved so fast. He'd never heard such a thunderous, heart-stopping roar. The path they stood on was about 6 feet wide and ran parallel to the river for farther than Dune could see in both directions. In the wall along the path were openings that must lead, Dune thought, to a tunnel that branched everywhere below the city. A string of lights like the one in the stairway hung high up against the arched ceiling. Dune knew he was standing beneath the north edge of Ember. In school, you were taught to remember the directions this way. North was the direction of the river. South was the direction of the greenhouses. East was the direction of the school. And west was the direction left over, having nothing in particular to mark it. All the pipeworks tunnels branched off from the main tunnel to the south, toward the city. Arlen leaned toward Dune and shouted into his ear, "First we'll go to the beginning of the river," she said. She led him up the main tunnel for a long way. They passed other people in yellow slickers, who greeted Arlen with a nod and glanced curiously at Dune. After 15 minutes or so, they came to the east edge of the pipeworks, where the river surged up from a deep chasm in the ground, churning so violently that its dark water turned white and filled the air with a spray that wet Dune's face. In the wall to their right was a wide double door. "See that door right there?" Arlen shouted, pointing. "Yes," Dune shouted back. "That's the generator room." "Can we go in?" "Of course not," said Arlen. "You have to have special permission." She pointed back down the main tunnel. "Now we'll go to the other end of the river," she said. She led him back, past the stairway door, all the way to the west edge of the pipeworks. There the river flowed into a huge opening in the wall and vanished into darkness. "Where does it go?" Dune asked. Arlen just shrugged. "Back into the ground, I guess. Now let's find Tunnel 97 and get to work." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "This is the map," she said. "You have one in your pocket, too. You have to use the map to find your way around in here." The map looked to Dune like an immense centipede. The river arched across the top of the page like the centipede's body, and the tunnels dangled down from it like hundreds of long, long legs that all tangled up with each other. To get to Tunnel 97, they followed a complicated route through passageways lined with crusty, rusted pipes that carried water to all the buildings of Ember. Puddles stood on the floor of the tunnel, and water dripped down in brown rivulets from the walls. Just as in the main tunnel, there was a string of bulbs along the ceiling that provided dim light. Dune occupied his mind by calculating how far underground he was. From the river to the ceiling of the main tunnel must be 30 feet or so, he thought. Above that were the storerooms, which occupied a layer at least 20 feet high. So that means he was 50 feet underground, with tons of earth and rock and buildings above him. The thought made him tense up his shoulders. He cast a quick glance upwards, as if all that weight might collapse onto his head. "Here we are," said Arlen. She was standing next to a leak that spurted a stream of water straight up from the wall. "We had to turn the shut-off valve, take the pipe apart, put on a new connector, and stick it back together again." With wrenches, hammers, washers, and black goop, they did this, getting soaked in the process. It took them most of the morning and proved to Dune that the city was in even worse shape than he had suspected. Not only were the lights about to fail and the supplies were about to run out, but the water system was breaking down. The whole city was crumbling, and what was anyone doing about it? When the lunch break came, Arlen took her lunch sack from a pocket in her tool belt and went off to meet some friends a few tunnels away. "You stay right here and wait until I get back," she said as she left. "If you wander around, you'll get lost." But Dune set out as soon as she disappeared. Using his map, he found his way back to the main tunnel, then hurried to the east end. He wasn't going to wait for special permission to see the generator. He was pretty sure he could find a way to get in on his own, and he did. He simply stood by the door and waited for someone to come out. Quite soon, a stout woman carrying a lunch sack pushed open the door and walked away. She didn't notice him. Before the door could close again, Dune slipped inside. Such a horrendous noise met him that he staggered backwards a few steps. It was an ear-splitting, growling, grinding, screaming noise, shot through with the hoarse "grackety-grackety" sound that underscored the deep chugga-chugga-chugga. Dune clapped his hands over his ears and stepped forward. In front of him was a gigantic black machine, 2 stories high. It was vibrating so hard it looked as if it might explode any second. Several people wearing earmuffs were busy around it. None of them noticed him come in. He tapped one of them on the shoulder. The person jumped and rolled around. He was an old man, Dune saw, with a deeply lined brown face. "I want to learn about the generator," Dune screamed, but he might as well have saved his breath. No one could hear him. No one could be heard in the uproar. The old man glared at him, made a shooing motion with his hand, and turned back to work. Dune stood and watched for a while. Beside the huge machine were ladders on wheels that the workers pushed back and forth and climbed up on to reach the higher parts. All over the room, greasy-looking cans and tools littered the floor. Against the wall stood big bins holding every kind of bolt and screw and gear and lever and rod and tube, all of them black with age and jumbled together. The workers scurried between the bins and the generator or simply stood and watched the thing shake. After a few minutes, Dune left. He was horrified. All his life, he had studied how things worked. It was one of his favorite things to do. He could take apart an old watch and put it back together exactly as it had been. He understood how the faucets in the sink worked. He'd fixed the toilet many times. He'd made a wheeled cart out of the parts of an old armchair. He even had the hazy idea of what was going on in the refrigerator. He was proud of his mechanical talents. There's only one thing he didn't understand at all, and that was electricity. What was the power that ran through the wires and into the light bulbs? Where did it come from? He had thought that if he could just get a look at the generator, he could have a clue he needed. From there, he could begin to work on a solution that could keep the lights of Ember burning. But one glimpse of the generator showed him how foolish he was. He expected to see something whose workings he could understand. A wheel turning, a spark being struck, some wires that led from one point to another. But this monstrous roaring thing, he wondered if anyone understood how it worked. It looked as if they were all doing their as if all they were doing was trying to keep it from flying apart. As it turned out, he was right. When the day was over and he was upstairs taking off his boots and slicker, he saw the old man from the generator room and went to talk to him. "Can you explain to me about the generator?" he asked. "Can you tell me how it works?" The old man just sighed. "All I know is the river makes it go." "But how?" The man shrugged. "Who knows? Our job is just to keep it from breaking down. The part breaks, we gotta put it on a new one. Part freezes up, we gotta oil it." He wipes his hand wearily across his forehead, leaving a streak of black grease. "I've been working on the generator for 20 years now. It's always managed to chug along, but this year, I don't know. The thing seems to break down every couple of minutes." He cracked a wry smile. "Of course, I hear we might run out of light bulbs before that, and then it won't matter if the generator works or not." Running out of light bulbs, running out of power, running out of time. Disaster was right around the corner. That's what Dune was thinking about when he stopped outside the gathering hall on his way home and saw Weena on the roof. She looked so free and happy up there. He didn't know why she was on the roof, but he wasn't surprised. It was the kind of thing she did, turning up in unexpected places. And now that she was a messenger, she could go just about anywhere. But how could she be so light-hearted when everything was falling apart? He headed for home. He lived with his father in a 2-bedroom apartment over his father's shop in Greengate Square. The small items shop, which sold things like nails, pins, tacks, clips, springs, jar lids, doorknobs, bits of wire, shards of glass, chunks of wood, and other small things that might be useful in some way. The small items shop had overflowed somewhat into their apartment above. In their front room, where other people might display a nice teapot on a shelf, or a few attractive squashes or tomatoes on a shelf. They had buckets and boxes and baskets full of spare items for the shop. Things Dune's father had collected but not yet organized for selling. Often these items spilled over onto the floor. It was easy to trip over things in this apartment, and not a good idea to go barefoot. Today, Dune didn't stop in at the shop to see his father before going upstairs. He wasn't in the mood for conversation. He removed 2 buckets of stuff from the couch, took it looked like mostly shoe heels, and flopped down on the cushions. He'd been stupid to think he could understand the generator just by looking at it, when other people have been working on it their entire lives. The thing was, he had to admit, he'd always thought he was smarter than other people. He'd been sure he could learn about electricity and help save the city. He wanted to be the one to do it. He imagined many times a ceremony in Harkin Square, organized to thank him for saving Ember, which, with the entire population in attendance and his father beaming in the front row. All Dune's life, his father had been saying to him, "You're a good boy, a smart boy. You'll do grand things someday. I know you will." But Dune hadn't done much that was grand so far. He ached to do something truly important, like finding the secret of electricity and, as his father watched, be rewarded for his achievement. The size of the reward didn't matter. A small certificate would do, maybe a badge to sew on his jacket. Now he was stuck in the muck of the pipeworks, patching up pipes that would leak and break again in a matter of days. It was even more useless and boring than being a messenger. The thought made him suddenly furious. He sat up, grabbed a shoe heel out of the bucket at his feet, and hurled it at with all his might. It arrived at the front door just as the door opened. Dune heard a loud whack and a loud ouch at the same moment. Then he saw the long, lean, tired-looking face of his father in the doorway. Dune's anger drained away. "Oh, I hit you, Father. I'm sorry." Dune's father rubbed the side of his head. He was a tall man, bald as a peeled potato, with a high forehead and a long chin. He had kind, slightly puzzled gray eyes. "Got me in the ear," he said. "What was that?" I got angry for a second," said Dune. "I threw one of these old heels." "I see," said his father. He brushed some bottle tops off a chair and sat down. "Does it have to do with your first day at work, son?" "Yes," said Dune. His father nodded. "Why did you tell me about it?" he said. Dune told him. When he was finished, his father ran a hand down his bald head as if smoothing the hair that wasn't there. He sighed. "Well," he said, "it sounds unpleasant, I have to admit. About the generator especially. That's bad news. But the pipeworks is your assignment, no way around it. What you get is what you get. What you do with what you get, though, that's more the point, wouldn't you say?" He looked at Dune and smiled, a bit sadly. "I guess so," Dune said. "But what can I do?" "I don't know," said his father. "You'll think of something. You're a clever boy. The main thing is to pay attention. Pay close attention to everything. Notice what no one else notices. Then you'll know what no one else knows. And that's always useful." He took off his coat and hung it from a peg on the wall. "How's the worm?" he asked. "I haven't looked at it yet." He went into his room and came with a small wooden box, covered it with an old scarf. He set the box on the table and took the scarf off, and he and his father both bent over to look inside. A couple of limp cabbage leaves lay on the bottom of the box. On one of the leaves was a worm about an inch long. A few days before school ended, Dune had found the worm on the underside of a cabbage leaf he was slicing up for dinner. It was a pale, soft green, velvety smooth all over, with tiny, stubby legs. Dune had always been fascinated by bugs. He wrote down his observations about them in a book he had titled Crawling and Flying Things. Each page of the book was divided lengthwise. Excuse me. Each page of the book was divided lengthwise down the center. On the left, he drew his pictures, with a pencil sharpened to a needle-like point. Moth wings with their branching patterns of veins, spider legs, which had minute hairs and tiny feet like claws, beetles with their feelers and their glossy armor. On the right, he wrote what he observed about each creature. He noted what it ate, where it slept, where it laid its eggs, and, if he knew, how long it lived. This was difficult with fast-moving creatures like moths and spiders. To learn anything about them, he had to catch what glimpses he could as they lived their lives out in the open. If he put them in a box, they scrambled around for a few days and then died. This worm, though, was different. It seemed perfectly happy to live in the box Dune had made for it. So far, it did only 3 things: eat, sleep. It looked like sleeping, though Dune couldn't tell if the worm closed its eyes, or if it even had eyes, and expel tiny black poop balls. That was it. "I've had it for 5 days now," said Dune. "It's twice as big as it was when I got it. It's eaten 2 square inches of cabbage leaf." "You're writing all this down?" Dune nodded. "Maybe," said his father, "you'll find some interesting new bugs in the pipeworks." Maybe, said Dune. But to himself he said, no, that's not enough. I can't go plodding around the pipework, stopping up leaks, looking for bugs, and pretending there's no emergency. I have to find something important down there. Something that's going to help. I have to. I just have to.